and do the screen share. And start the playlist. And tell me if the audio is okay. I did a little testing earlier. It seemed to be working okay for me, but we'll see. Ready?
Yep.
Here we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Guild of Vermont Furniture Makers SEO webinar. For our discussion, Google will be the only search engine on which we concentrate. Bing's share of the search market is a very distant second, and Yahoo is pretty much completely irrelevant at this point. Today, we're going to be talking about what SEO is and isn't. I'll discuss the most important aspects of SEO from Google's point of view, and we'll take a look at the human side of it to see what influences actual users. Good SEO isn't just about getting more traffic, it's also about the quality of the traffic on your website. And then there are the tools used to measure the success or failure of SEO efforts. When Google updates its algorithm, it can sometimes have devastating effects on a website's ranking for their targeted keywords. First, let's go over some of the terminology so that you'll know what I'm talking about once I get into the geeky stuff. SERPs, Search Engine Result Pages. These are the results of a search. SERP rankings refer to what position a website is at within the results. The closer you are to number one, the better your site is ranked. Keywords or keyword phrases. These refer to the search terms that people use on Google. They also refer to the terms you will be targeting so that you rank well on those searches. Page titles. These are the titles that appear at the top of the browser window, not on the actual page. They are also the large blue text links on SERPs. H1 titles. These are the titles that appear on your page. It's usually the largest type and it's towards the top of the page. Page speed is a measure of how fast a page on your website loads. This is critical for mobile users. Inbound links and outbound links. These are links on other websites that point to your website and links on your website that point to other websites. CMS, Content Management System. This is web-based software that you use to create and manage your website. WordPress is the most popular open source CMS. Squarespace is a popular hosted CMS. The difference between open source and hosted in this context is that with open source software, you can download the files and customize the code on your own computer, then re-upload them to your server. Any customizations done on a hosted CMS have to be done using the software, which limits the flexibility. CTR, or click-through rate. This is a measure of how many clicks your website gets compared to the number of impressions. This is mostly used in Google Ads, but it is used in Google Search Console as well. If your website had 100 impressions under a keyword and you had 5 clicks, your CTR would be 5%. And in this case, impressions means how many times your website actually came up, no matter where it was ranked in a search. Session, a Google Analytics term that refers to a visit to a website by a user. A session can be anywhere from a second or two to several minutes and can have one page view or several. A session ends after 30 minutes of inactivity. So if they have your website opened on a tab and get distracted for a half hour or more, then come back to it, it'll count as 2 sessions under one user. Bounce rate. A bounce is when a user comes to your website and only views one page before leaving or ending the session. A high bounce rate is something to be avoided and means that you might need to work on your homepage to get users to explore your website. So how do you improve your website's SEO? First, we'll go over titles and H1s with CMS instructions. There are a few things you can do quickly to improve your SEO that are straightforward and it can be done with a minimal amount of training. Page titles and H1 titles are the two most important things you can make adjustments to that will affect your SERP rankings. The URL of your pages, often called permalinks, and the alt text of your images are also easy to manage and have an impact on your rankings. Beyond those, there are a lot of little things that can be done. Some of them are relatively quick and technical. Some of them take a long time and require patience and persistence. Let's take a look at page titles and H1 headings first. Page titles, as I mentioned earlier, are the titles you see at the top of your browser window, and more importantly, the main text link in search results. I've done a quick review of all of your websites to see what CMSs were being used. There are 9 WordPress, 8 custom coded, 4 Squarespace, 3 Weebly, 1 Wix, and 1 Shopify. We'll go by order of popularity, so I'll start with WordPress. I'm going to assume that your home page is a page and not a post. Posts are usually used for blogging, news, or updates, since they display in a reverse chronological order, meaning that the last post is at the top. You can find your home page in a couple of different ways in the admin section of WordPress. You can check settings under that reading. This page will tell you if you're using posts or pages for the home page, and it will show you the name of the page that you have selected for the home page. Or you can just go straight to the pages and look for front page added to the end of the page name. The name of that page is usually the default page title for that page. A common mistake is to have that page called Home without customizing the page title in another way. Some themes may have a built-in function to allow you to override the page title, like we see with the Guild's WordPress website. There are also plugins that can help with that. The simplest way to make this change is to just rename the page. Use your keywords and keep it short. According to Google, page titles should be just under 65 characters. That is roughly the maximum they display on SERPs, and additional characters are ignored in their algorithm. It seems a little harsh, but what are you going to do? Changing the H1 titles is even easier. Depending on the WordPress theme you're using, changing the title of the page also changes the H1 title of the page. If your theme allows you to have a custom H1 title on your page, you should include most, if not all, of the keywords you used in the page title. You should also feel free to add an additional word or 2 or 3, since there isn't the limit that there is on page titles. H1 titles are the large font lines you see near or at the top of your content. Be sure to take a look at the page on your laptop and on your phone after you update it, because some font styles may not play nice everywhere. With a custom coded website, the way to change the page titles can vary too much to really review here. I can show you the part of the code where the page title is within the page. It's in what's called the head. The most basic form of a web page looks like this: HTML, the opening head tag, the closing head tag, the opening body tag, the closing body tag, and the closing HTML tag. Within the head is the title, which looks like this. There's a title opening tag, and here we see the Guild's title, which is Handmade Furniture by Vermont's Finest Studio Furniture Makers, and then the end title tag. If your website is using PHP files, the page titles may be populated by a database. You may need to consult with a web developer to learn how to make the changes to the page title. And if you're the adventurous type, you could open the files of your website and find out where the code is for the page title. If it looks like straight up text, you can try making the changes and uploading the files to your website hosting server. H1 titles appear within the body part of the page. The body is the part of the page that affects what's seen on screen. looking for the beginning and end tags for the title, H1 and then /H1. This may be also tied to a database. If you want to open these files for viewing or editing, I recommend using Notepad++. That's 2 plus signs. It has a powerful search and replace function that comes in handy when making multiple changes to multiple files. Squarespace has consistent controls over page titles and H1 titles for all of their templates. This is one of the things that people like about Squarespace. Their controls are simple and consistent. This is one of the things I dislike about Squarespace because that simplicity means some things are impossible or nearly impossible to customize. But I digress. Let's take a look at the Squarespace SEO panel. In the left sidebar of the SEO panel, the top 3 tabs are SEO checklist, search keywords, and hire an SEO expert. SEO checklist and hire an SEO expert open up pages in new tabs. The SEO checklist link takes you to a page on Squarespace's support website, where they provide you with a long list of tips that include things to do before you launch your website to specific things you should do for each page as you add to your website. A lot of the items on that page are the same ones we're covering here today. The search keywords is a link to your analytics panel, which we'll get to in a minute. Below those 3 tabs are search appearance, SEO title format, and SEO site description. Search appearance shows you what the link to your website will look on a Google search. That's just a preview. There's nothing to edit there. The title and description can be edited, and the changes will show in the appearance. The appearance section has 3 tabs: home, pages, and items. When you click on either the pages or items tab, the site description disappears. You would add that under individual page settings under SEO and then SEO description, which is right below SEO title, where you can customize page titles if you need to use something other than the SEO title format. The title format uses variables to construct the page title. Here's a list of the 3 variables used here. %S is the site title. %P is the page's SEO title, or page title if there is no SEO title. And %I is the SEO title of an individual collection, like a blog post, product, or event, or a collection's item title if there is no SEO title.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Now let's take a look at Squarespace analytics panel.
Yep.
As you go through this, can you use your mouse arrow and follow along? Kind of like follow the bouncing ball?
Can you see my mouse arrow?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yes.
you can.
Okay.
That'll help us with the,
hugely. Yeah, that's a
as
really
the
good idea.
descriptions
Okay.
go.
Sure.
Analytics panel. If you're already using Google Analytics, there isn't much use for Squarespace Analytics. The numbers aren't related and the tools are extremely limited compared to Google Analytics. The one small benefit of looking at this, other than the convenience, is that it has the keywords listed. These keywords seem to be coming from Google Search Console, since they do correlate in the few instances that I've had access to both for the same website. One big drawback about the Squarespace version is that you can't change the order of the listings. It's always ordered by the number of clicks. Showing the keywords with the most impressions or the best average position is key. And it's what you should keep coming back to Google Search Console for until Squarespace adds that ability. Wix has an easy to use tool called SEO Whiz. To access it, go to Marketing Home in your admin dashboard, then click on Get Found in Google and click on Start Now. From there, you enter your business name, location, and 5 keywords. SEO Wiz will give you a list of suggested keywords for you to add to your list. Once you're done, Wix will create a thing called your personalized SEO plan. Your SEO plan is filled with checklists and shows suggestions for improving your website's SEO. At the top of the list is to update your homepage title. They call it SEO title, as well as the SEO description, which is actually called the meta description, and the homepage content. There are suggestions to go along with each task, so it keeps things pretty tidy and simple. Wix, by default, uses your post title as the page title, and the page description is taken from the first lines of your post or page. If you want to customize these items, you can use the page SEO setting on individual pages. You can find the page SEO setting as a submenu under the page you want to edit. You can make changes to the SEO page title and description. If you have a Weebly site, it's pretty much the same as a Wix site. When you're looking at your website admin dashboard, click on Settings in the top menu, then click on SEO in the left panel. Here you will set the page title and meta description. This will set the SEO settings for your home page. To make adjustments to individual pages, navigate to the Pages part of your dashboard by selecting Pages from the top menu. Then choose the page you want to edit in the left column. Under Advanced Settings, you'll find Page Title and Page Description. To change your H1 titles, you can edit those in the content area of your pages. And finally, Shopify. Shopify has a similar setup to Wix and Weebly. From the admin section, navigate to Online Store, then Preferences. Here you will be able to enter the page title and description for your homepage. For individual pages, the page title and the H1 title are linked. You select a product, collection, or web page and enter the title. That will serve as both the page title and the H1 title. The convenience of these types of CMSs come at a price of flexibility. Now let's move on to keyword research and targeting.
Steve, I have a question for you.
You know your business better than anybody. So
The H1 title, I understand the page title needs to be a concise sentence to describe your page because it shows up. Is the H1 title just like a bunch of nonsense words strung together so that it's giving, like, does it have to be a sentence or does it just want to be words? Sort of.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a sentence. It should just be like a header. Pretty similar to your page title, but you don't have the restriction on the length like you do on a page title because that has a limit of 65 characters for Google.
So do you want to like double up on, say you're calling something a table or I don't know, if something has multiple words to describe it, would you want to just double up on those and like you'd say like handmade, bespoke, and then all these other fluff words to sort of catch people's
Yes.
attention?
You would put those in the H1, not the page title.
Okay.
H1, that will show up on the page. So you want to keep in mind that people are going to be reading that. So
People read H1 or they
Yeah,
just
they do.
read the
That's on the content area.
yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
That's the large type on the content area.
Okay.
And if it gets too long, it might look kind of bad on the phone. You definitely want to check on laptop versus phone to see how it's going.
Okay. I thought it was just something hidden in the metadata, I guess. Okay, that makes sense.
That's page title. That's at the top of the browser window, which people typically don't see, but that is what the big blue links are on Google search.
Got it. Okay.
You are the one that should come up with the first list of keyword phrases that you want to target. Your initial list should have between 5 and 10 phrases that are mostly unique. It's okay to have a little overlap, like custom handmade furniture and handmade wood furniture, but try and keep it to a minimum. The best free keyword research tool is Google Ads Keyword Planner. It's not the easiest tool to use, but it gets the job done, and it's coming straight from Google, which is where we want our websites to be found. The keyword planner will tell us which particular phrases will make better targets based on search volume and competition. When the initial list is entered into the keyword planner, a bunch of suggested keywords or keyword phrases come up in the results. After whittling the keyword phrases down to just the medium to high volume ones, we look at the phrases closely to make sure we don't include anything that doesn't belong. Google is pretty good with their suggestions, but they're not mind readers. They will include handmade metal furniture or furniture manufacturers or other phrases that are clearly not part of your business model. Once we've eliminated those, we look at the list sorted by search volume and look for any with medium or low competition. These are rare since a high search volume, almost by definition, means the competition will be stiff. Your final list should be about 10 keyword phrases that you want to target. Targeting more phrases can complicate and sometimes dilute the effort of more important keyword phrases. With that list in hand, you next need to see how you are currently ranking for those terms. This is called a baseline SERP. One of the toughest things about SEO is link building. Not all links are created equal. Having links from other websites is always good because it gives people a way to get to your website. Some links have SEO value and some do not. Getting those links is hard work and requires patience and persistence. As owners, you are in a better position to know what types of organizations and media outlets would be best suited to highlight your work. For link building, don't concentrate so much on the target audience of those websites. You're mostly after the SEO benefits. Get creative with the targeting. From experience, I can tell you that getting a response from a cold call email is rare. If you don't have the time to devote to this, you can make a list of the websites you'd like to have a link from and your reasons for having those links and hire a professional to do the work for you. Content and outreach are what it takes to get links to your website outside of your network of colleagues and business connections. Basically, it's blog and brag. It's public relations. The more websites that you have linking to your website, the better off you will usually be in the SERP rankings, especially if those links have a higher domain authority or DA than you. More on this term in a minute. Getting links from business groups like the Guild is almost always going to help since they are likely to have a decent DA. One thing you can do that's fairly low effort is to set up Google alerts for your business. If your business name is mentioned, you'll get an alert. You can then contact the website owner and ask for a link with a high degree of legitimacy. You probably won't get much, if any, alerts, but it's a set it and forget it thing you can do that might help. One last thing you can do is check your competitors, not just your fellow Guild members, but woodworkers and furniture makers in the Northeast. There may be regional opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise be aware of. Of the links that don't have much SEO value, there are two groups. The first group is the no-follow links. Typically, links from major websites have the rel equals no follow tag on the link to your website if they allow links. What that tag does is send a message to the Googlebot crawling the website, telling it not to follow that link to your website. This takes away the SEO value, but again, a link on YouTube or Facebook is still a good thing. The second group is the low domain authority crowd. Links from these kinds of websites don't do harm to your SEO, and they do help a little bit. A quick check of your websites tell me that you guys have DAs between 1 and 22, with one of you at 34, and that's out of 100. The Guild website has a DA of 24, So the links on that website to your websites are beneficial, except for the one with 34. To put things in context, we can look at a few other businesses that operate in Vermont to see where they are in terms of DA. Hannaford.com has a DA of 59. City Market Co-op here in Burlington has 50. Healthy Living Market has 43. You can see that these grocery stores have a higher DA. Not surprising given the scale of their businesses, but good to know if you're setting a goal. Now let's take a look at 3 New Hampshire furniture makers that I found by Googling New Hampshire custom furniture. Chiltons.com has a DA of 28. Cons Cutting has a DA of 3. And AVW Custom Furniture has a DA of 7. This is much closer to where your numbers are and should give you even more context for your DA score. And now a bit of background on domain authority. Domain authority and PageRank are 2 terms that have been used over the last several years.
Go ahead.
How do you find out your domain authority?
Moz.com is the place to do it. There's a couple other sites that do it, but if you Google domain authority checker, there's quite a few websites that do it, and a few of those websites actually use Moz to get their results.
And is that M-A-Z?
M-O-Z.
M-O-Z.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Years in SEO, and they basically mean the same thing. Some say PageRank is dead because Google no longer shares that particular algorithm, though they are said to use it internally as part of their overall ranking algorithm. So there's basically no way for us, the public, to check PageRank. Domain authority, however, is something we can check. And it was found to be very much in sync with PageRank before Google pulled the plug on the public version of PageRank. This was developed by a company named Moz. They've been the gold standard in SEO for well over a decade and have a bunch of proprietary and free tools for website optimization. Domain authority has over 40 factors that go into calculating DA. But the big ones are the quality and the number of links and how well your website is structured. It should be noted, though, that a high DA doesn't guarantee you'll rank well for your given keyword, and a low DA doesn't prevent it. This area of SEO is more of a soft science. It's still worth taking a look at, but it's not worth obsessing over. Now let's talk about Google business pages. If you don't already have one, get yourself a Google/Gmail account for your business. You'll need it for Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and your Google business page. It's called Google My Business. The setup involves confirming your mailing address by sending a postcard through snail mail, so be prepared to wait about a week for that to arrive. Some of the useful information that you can add to your Google business page includes address, hours, phone number, website, business description, and images. One of the biggest benefits of setting this up is that this information comes up in some search results. You can get a full right column on desktop when somebody Googles your business name. Having a Google business page also helps with the map box of Google SERPs. The map box shows a map with local businesses that match the search. The businesses that show up in the map box almost always rank in the top 5 or 10 on the links below. By default, on a desktop, only 3 businesses are listed in the map box. These spots on the SERP are the best possible location, especially for businesses that focus on their local markets. The images part of your profile should be filled with the photography from your website. This is an advantage you have over many other businesses because most of you are, if not all of you, already have great photos of your beautiful products. Use that advantage here and in social media. How do you measure your success? baselines. You can't measure success unless you start with a baseline. Most of your SEO measurements will be in the SERP rankings. That's the goal, to improve those rankings. The thing to watch for when the traffic increases is the quality of the traffic. This is why an accurate baseline is so important. Tangible evidence of the success or failure of your SEO efforts are essential early in the process. This will guide your continued SEO improvements. Using Google Search Console will show you some keyword phrases have a higher click-through rate than others. Those are the ones you should concentrate on. The importance of Google Search Console is overshadowed by Google Analytics. Google Analytics quit including organic search queries, the keywords, about 10 years ago. Eventually, Google Search Console emerged as a news source for search impressions and clicks for the keywords. It also includes average position, which refers to the SERPs. The tab on the left side you'll concentrate on the most is performance. Of the 5 tabs on the table below, the line graph, query has the most information you'll need. Here you see the search keywords that people have used that brought your website up on a SERP. By default, it will be sorted by clicks. You can click on impressions to change the sorting to that. There are also filters you can add to narrow the list down to just the most useful information. You can filter by click-through rate to find keywords that draw people into your website beyond the first page. You can also filter by position to see what your high-ranking keyword phrases are, and by changing the filter to see what keywords need work. If you download a CSV file, which can be used with Microsoft Excel, or if you use Google Drive, you can save it to a Google Sheet. These include position, which isn't included on the website for some reason. Like Google Analytics, the data is best looked at in the aggregate. The longer you collect this information, the more useful it becomes. You can see seasonal shifts in traffic as well as spikes from emails or social media posts. Search Console and Google Analytics are independent of each other. The numbers of the two don't correspond. They can be hundreds or more than 1,000 clicks or sessions apart. The key is to look at the data from each tool individually in the aggregate. There's a reason Google Analytics overshadows the other tools. It's pretty awesome. I could really get into the geek weeds and go on and on and on about this tool, but hopefully I won't go on too much. There are 2 basic views I look at first when checking monthly internet traffic on a website: Overview and Channels. Overview can be found under Audience on the left side. Overview does what it says: basic stats in a line graph form. If there are any spikes or drops in page views, pages per session, average session duration, or bounce rate, you'll see them right away. And channels can be found on the left under acquisition and all traffic and the channels. Channels will tell you where your traffic is coming from: organic search, paid search, direct, referral, and social. Direct is intentionally vague. It can include a lot of things, including links from email. This would be one place to look for traffic from a newsletter. The organic search won't give you any keywords. You'll have to use Google Search Console for that. You can adjust the controls so you can view the location of your organic traffic, which is helpful sometimes. The tabs on the left side have a section called Reports. That section contains real-time, audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. We're going to concentrate on audience, acquisition, and behavior. Here are some of the more interesting and sometimes useful reports. Under audience, go to geo and then location.
I don't have slides for this part.
And then from there, look within the US. You'll see the traffic broken up by state and ranked by the number of users. Also under audience is mobile and then overview. This tells you the shares of traffic between desktops, tablets, and phones. The last one under audience is users flow or user flow. This is a weird looking report, but it shows the flow of traffic through your website in a visual and interactive way that no other report does. You can choose from several dimensions, which will be divided in the first column and ranked by number of users. The next 4 columns show how users work their way through your website in a flowchart. In this example, I'm looking at the Guild's website and comparing one month to the previous month. The dimension I chose was source. I also added a customization to the dimension that only shows Google as a source. In the second column, you can see that the page called VT Custom Furniture is the first page people see slightly more than the home page. The next column shows the next page that users are navigating to. The next 2 columns are the next 2 pages users are looking at. Hovering over the shaded areas brings up more detailed information. It can be easy, especially for a data nerd like me, to get sucked into this report. You need to see accurate data in your traffic report to get a better understanding of what needs improvement and what's going right. Analytics spam is something that muddies your data. What is analytics spam? Simply put, it's data coming from websites that aren't yours. This happens when the Google Analytics code used in your website is used in another website. The reasons people do this aren't entirely clear, though over the years, some of the spam I've seen was clearly a weird way to advertise SEO services. When you suddenly see 100 referrals from top10seoresults.com in your referrals report, you get the message. The best way to combat this is to create what's called a segment in Google Analytics. Segments are constructed filters for your data. They can be built using most of the same metrics used in Google Analytics, so they're really flexible. My trick for weeding out 99% of analytics spam is making a simple filter that only includes traffic with the host name that includes your domain name. This means if the Google Analytics code is on a website that's on another server, it gets filtered out. You can add to that or make other segments that only look for traffic from certain states or countries, only phones, or only a certain time of day. It's very flexible. Baseline page speed. There are several tools that will measure page speed. Most will, to varying degrees, tell you what is slowing the page down and how you can fix it. Most of these fixes are pretty technical. Most of these involve compression, minification, deferring, caching, and asynchronous loading. These are too technical for this tutorial. Google Page Speed Insights and Pingdom Tools are 2 of my favorite page speed analysis tools. Like the traffic software, these 2 and others will vary quite a bit in their scores. The key is to keep the comparisons as apples to apples. If you know of a fast-loading website that is similar to yours, test it and compare it to yours. Compare the Pingdom score to the Pingdom score and the Google score to the Google score. Don't try and mix the 2. There is one optimization issue that is common and is almost always the biggest drag on page speed. The good news is that it's relatively easy to fix, especially if you're used to uploading your own pictures onto your website. Optimizing oversized photos is the easiest way to improve your page speed. To make this correction, you'll need an image editor. I use Photoshop, but I use that for a lot of other things. For simple image editing, you can use other programs or apps, many of which are free. GIMP, G-I-M-P, is a free photo editing tool software that's available for PCs and Macs. I used this for a while a few years ago, and it can get the job done. I eventually went back to Photoshop because of the better filters and adjustments and just because I was familiar with it. Before smartphones came along and made our lives easier and more complicated, There was only desktop resolution to worry about for web designers. Desktop resolution is still 72 pixels per inch. Phone displays are more than 200 pixels per inch. If your website is responsive, that is, if your website layout is different on a phone than it is on a desktop, your pictures will load at different sizes. For instance, let's say you have an image that is 70% of the width of your web page and has a maximum width of 1,000 pixels. On a phone in portrait mode, that same picture is shown at 100% width. Since a phone is almost 5 inches wide in portrait mode, we know that the resolution is over 200 pixels per inch. You can do the math to see that the image should be a little over 1,000 pixels. But what about the landscape mode or tablets? Good question. Unfortunately, there aren't any easy answers, especially with custom coded sites. Having the website load different images based on the device the visitor is using is possible, but it's very technical. My advice is to make sure your product shots look crisp on a tablet in landscape mode. Experiment with pixel size and compression settings to see where the quality starts to degrade. In general, start with a size that is 125% of the width that you'll need on a desktop. If it looks good on a tablet, try sizing it down 100 pixels in width at a time until you see a reduction in sharpness. Use the same method on your logo. The image will usually display much smaller on phones, so the PPI, pixels per inch, should be fine, but you don't want to have a fuzzy logo on any platform. Now let's talk about what's bad for your SEO. Keyword stuffing is probably one of the most obvious tactics that will result in being penalized by Google.
Hold on. That is the wrong, it's in the wrong order there. There we go.
Now let's move on to baseline SERPs. You can measure your success if you don't know where you're starting from. You should measure your SERPs fairly often in the beginning, probably every 2 or 3 days until you have 5 or more results. SERPs can fluctuate pretty randomly, so several snapshots of your rankings will give you a more accurate average ranking. After you have your baseline SERPs, you can make your improvements and sit back and wait. Sometimes it takes a few days, more often it takes a few weeks. SERPs should be checked weekly or bi-weekly at this point.
Got a
If you
question.
see some improvement, you'll know you played a part.
Okay.
What tool are you using to get this baseline SERPs report?
Oh, I have a program called Robot SEO, and you can program it to check your SERPs. You can also, it's a subscription based thing. You can also just do it manually, like Google the term, and then I always have my search results spit out 100 at a page instead of 10, which is the default. You can adjust that. And then you just count down to see where you're at, or if you want to just estimate it, you can see how far down the page. If you're halfway down the page, you're roughly around 50. But there are a few SERP checkers out there.
And how do you take into account, back in the day, everybody got the same results. Now everybody gets different results. And how do you take that into account?
It's usually based on location.
Right.
And you can change your location if you use Google. It's not easy to do. You do it at the bottom of the page. And some of the SERP tools that are out there, you can pick your location. So I could pick, Burlington, Vermont. I could pick Boston. I could pick Los Angeles. So yeah, it's good to keep an eye on the local, and it's also good to keep an eye on other locations just to see what the difference is.
Uh-huh. Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. Keep going.
Played a part in that. and you'll be ready to move on to other optimization methods. If you don't see any improvement, be patient. It can take Google more than 6 weeks to re-index a website sometimes. Having about a month of Google Analytics and Google Search Console data would be the minimum amount to effectively compare and evaluate the effects of SEO improvements. If you don't have either in place and want to get started as soon as possible with the improvements, you can check your website hosting company to see if they offer traffic measurement tools. Most companies offer one or more server-based options for monitoring website traffic. Webalizer and AW Stats are among the most common. But again, this won't give you the same information that Google Search Console or Google Analytics will. But if you do see an increase in traffic, that'll be a good sign. Now let's talk about what's bad for your SEO. Keyword stuffing is probably one of the most obvious tactics that will result in being penalized by Google. And when I say obvious, I don't mean that it's obvious that you will be penalized. I mean that it will be obvious to somebody who is on your website. Writing compelling copy is hard enough without worrying about including keywords. When you make a conscious effort to include them, it often feels awkward and ham-handed. If it's done well, it will probably still feel awkward writing it, but reading it will feel less so. Having a friend look it over is a good way to tell if it reads well. As the writer, it's hard not to concentrate on the keywords as you're reading it. Keyword density is a term that refers to the percentage of keywords in relation to the total number of words in the content part of your page. The goal is to keep it down to about 2%. So if you have a 400-word piece that you've written, the number of times a keyword or keyword phrase should be used is 2. That doesn't sound like much, does it? But let's not forget, this applies only to the text in the content area of your page. Your primary keyword should be used in your page title. So that's one more spot. You can also use it in the alt text of an image. That is the text that describes an image that's unseen by users unless they're using a screen reader, which is mostly used by blind users.
Oh, hold on a second.
This can also, you can also use it in the meta description of
Steve, the keeping it down to 2%, is that for style for the reader, or is that for Google? Does Google actually see that and punish you if you've got it?
Yeah, good question. Google can see that and may punish you. I mean, it's 2% is an estimate. Nobody really knows what the algorithm is, but you know, people study this stuff and they see 2%.
So not just a style thing.
Yeah, no, not just a style thing. It's a potential penalty.
It's real.
I've-
Okay.
I've got a question about this as well.
Sure.
I was under the impression you could have more than one keyword for a page.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you talk about keep your keyword down to 2%, is that per keyword
Yes.
or it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you don't want to spread it out too much on a page. You don't want to try and get too many keywords on a page because it might dilute your efforts. But you know, 2 or 3, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Any more questions? No? Okay.
use it in the meta description of your page, which, as we've heard from Wix and Weebly and others, is also called your page description, which doesn't affect the SEO, but it helps users decide which search result they're going to pick by giving context to the page in the SERPs. For the 2 spots on the page, one of them should be your H1 header, which usually corresponds with your page title. That leaves one more place to put it within the content. If you have a subheader on your page, like an H2, it could go there. If not, just put it where it feels like it should naturally go within the text. Another thing that hurts SEO is malware. Malware can not only cripple your website, it can land you in Google purgatory. Every website is vulnerable to hacking, but obviously some are more vulnerable. Government and major corporate websites have the best defense against hacking. But as you've probably seen in the news, even they get hacked every once in a while. And not all hacks are equal. Some are just pranks, some target databases, and some are just destructive. For websites like yours that most likely don't have any financial data, the pranks and destructive hacks are the ones to be concerned about. If you do have an e-commerce website, the financial data is most likely stored on a different server, but it's worth investigating. Ask your web developer and/or website hosting company about that. Malware infections happen when a hacker embeds code on the pages of your website that will attempt to download malicious software to the visitors' computers, the visitors of your website. When Google indexes your website and comes across malware, it will automatically tag your website and display a message under your link on SERPs that looks something like, "The site ahead contains malware," or "suspicious site." You can do a free malware check of your website at sitecheck.sucuri.net. This will be in the notes. And if you want to have them keep an eye on your website 24/7, you can pay them $199 a year. Downtime. Now let's move on to baseline SERPs.
Oops,
You can measure your success.
sorry about that.
Now let's talk about what's bad for your website. The financial data is most site hosting company about that. Malware infections happen when a hacker embeds code on the pair. It will automatically tag your website and display it that looks something like, "The site ahead contains malware," or
I know,
"suspicious
it's like-
site." You can do a free malware check of your website at sitecheck.sucuri.net. This will be in the notes. And if you want to have them keep an eye on your website 24/7, you can pay them $199 a year. Downtime is another thing that can knock your website down in the rankings. If you're running a WordPress site, there's a few free plugins that will send an alert if your website is down. If you're already using Jetpack, it has that feature. Jetpack has a lot of other features, so if that's the only thing you're going to use it for, I would look for something with a smaller footprint. That would be good for your page speed. Broken links are another thing that can keep your pages from ranking as well as they should. Check your links every once in a while. WordPress has free plugins for this as well. And there are websites that can crawl your website to check for broken links. And those are free websites. Bad reviews can have a negative effect on your rankings. Though the extent is largely unknown, it's more of a user perception problem than a ranking problem. If you do have Google business reviews, it's a good idea to always respond to them, whether they're positive or negative. All right, so with that, let's wrap it up and open up for questions.
All right.
Steve,
Yes.
I have one question about impressions.
Okay.
So let's say you're on like page 10, nowhere, in other words, but
Right.
you're there nonetheless. Is that still one impression?
I think for an impression, it actually needs to be seen. So someone would have to go to page 10
I see. Okay.
because you could be on page 100, but if nobody sees it, I don't believe that's marked as an impression by Google.
Great. Sorry, I'm in the dark here. Looks a little weird.
Figuratively.
Yeah,
There we go.
I have a question. If
Okay.
on your website you have a lot of images that just are labeled JPEG 6419 or something, should you be going back in and relabeling all those images?
Yes, the file names matter a little bit. You can put keywords in there, and the alt text is more important. You know what alt text is for an image?
No.
So what kind of website do you have? Is it custom coded or WordPress?
We are the Shopify person.
Which one?
The Shopify. I think you said there
Oh,
was.
Shopify. Okay. Yeah, I don't have access to a Shopify account, so I wasn't able to really dig in and see what that's like. But you should be able to click on an image and edit it, and there should be a way to add alt text, ALT
Yeah.
text.
So I went in and I've been entering alt text for the photos. You can do it in Shopify.
Great. I don't know if you can change the file names, but that's less important than the.
So
What
if,
exactly,
oh, sorry, if you're logging all your photos on Google Drive, is that the best place to change the file name of the photo? Because then you use the photo from Google Drive into Shopify.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. If not, I mean, just do it before you put it up on Google Drive. But I'm pretty sure you can do that on Google
Okay.
Drive.
Great.
so the title of the picture is what will come up. What is the alt text? What's the purpose of that?
That is for screen readers, but the bots see it too. So when you do an image search, that will help your images come up in that search.
So should the alt text be the same or should it be something different?
It should describe what the picture is, but it's also an opportunity to put in keywords.
Okay.
It's longer.
Yeah, there's no limit on the length of the alt text.
Free
Hey,
stuff.
Steve,
Mhm.
what's the name of the panel, whatever, on my website, which is alt text? Because I don't have something called alt text. What is it on my website?
I would have to take a look. I'm pretty sure it's in there.
You don't have to do it now.
I'm pretty sure Dana built that into your website, because John has a custom CMS. It's not just custom coded, but this guy Dana Adams built a custom content management system. So
And then he dumped me.
Okay. But I'm pretty sure he did build that in. He did a little customization with page titles and stuff like that at my suggestion. And hopefully he already had the alt text in there, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna pull up your website and see if you do have alt text on your pictures.
I think I do. I just don't think it's called that.
Well, I mean, technically it is that. It probably wouldn't be called that in the back end, but I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, you don't have to worry about it now, Steve, if you don't want.
All right.
So I have another question about blogs.
Okay.
They sort of got unfashionable about 2 years or 3 years ago, that people didn't really say they read them or anything, but now it sounds like they're good to do now because of the search aspect of them.
They are. Google loves fresh content. And, you know, if you were to have a blog post about, you know, something that another website might like to highlight, that's a good way to get new links. Like I was saying, blog and brag, and, you know, it's public relations. Reach out to, you know, your local paper or some kind of trade organization. You know, like the blog post on the Guild site. I think you kind of have a blog there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You know, current news, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I know that blogging is tough to do. It's like pulling teeth for myself, but it's if you can do it, and if you can be a little bit consistent about it, I would shoot for once a month. If it's tough and you're just getting started, because like I said, Google loves fresh content, and the more content you have, the better. It's like flypaper. The more flypaper you have, the more flies you're going to catch. So.
And what about a YouTube channel? Is that something that's really smart to have to get links to your website?
Yeah, I mean, the more outlets you have, the better. And again, you would need to be kind of consistent with updating it, you know, putting new content on there. If you're just going to put like 4 or 5 videos on there and then forget it and leave it alone, that's not really going to do you much good. It won't do you any harm, but
and then one other question is, what about Pinterest? That used to be a big driver to our website. I'm wondering about it again.
I don't know that much about Pinterest. I tried to get into that a few years ago, and I was, you know, spread myself a little thin with all the new social media platforms, and I just kind of let that one dry up. But
I think
Pinterest.
that's a good question for Alex.
Oh yeah, that is a good question for Alex.
My impression is that Pinterest attracts a younger audience.
And designers, I think a lot of designers use it. I was just wondering if you knew.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about Pinterest. I kind of looked at Etsy a while ago for John, and it just seems like it wasn't really a good match because you guys all do high-end furniture, and that's not really a good place for Etsy. But you would be able to corner the market on there, I'm sure. But it probably wouldn't be worth your time and effort. But I don't know. That's just something to consider.
There's another potter down in the southwestern part of the state, Jessica Phillips, who's had fantastic results on Pinterest, and does some instruction on how she does it. It is far too confusing for me to keep track of, but look her up. I know that she's in the Vermont Crafts Council, and I'm pretty sure her name is Jessica Phillips, or maybe it's Putnam Phillips, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't find her, let me know, and I'll send you a link.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just I've never had a Pinterest account. I've never posted anything on it, but I know other people are posting my work on there, and I just got a major order off of Pinterest recently from somebody outside of the country. So I guess it does something.
Yeah.
That's
Because
one
somebody
nice
explained it to me that it has a sort of rotating thing like Facebook, but at the same time it stays static and you're bored. So it's like having your own magazine in a funny way, but you have to keep refreshing it, but it does stay there the whole time. So if somebody's looking for something, I don't know, it might show up your pages, but it's color coded as well. So it's complicated.
Any other questions or thoughts or?
Yeah, I had a question. So I was reading that Google is going to, in 2021, start taking into account page loading speed. So what are your thoughts on that? And I know you mentioned shrinking photo sizes, but what would the second most important step be in terms of improving load speed, in your opinion?
Probably, like I said, minification, caching. It's kind of technical stuff. If you have a WordPress site, there are cache plugins and minification plugins. My favorite one for WordPress is something called Auto Optimize or Auto Optimize. It's all one word, Auto Optimize. But yeah, that, and with custom coded sites, there are ways you can do that, not minification necessarily, but you can do browser caching, things like that. And yeah, I think page speed is already a ranking factor. I think Google is going to make it more important because everybody's going to mobile, and it's really crucial for mobile.
You said we could download all those slides from that?
Yeah, I put the link in chat, and I can also resend that to John so he can send it to your group email. I tried.
Yeah, could you please?
Sure.
I think I did that already, actually.
Now, somebody said that the attachment didn't come through. I think that was weird.
You can just send it to Vermont Furniture Google Groups, I think it's called. You've got that.
I can't actually. That's the email I sent you earlier that said that I wasn't allowed to do that because I'm not a member of the group. So
okay, all right. Just send it to me then, Steve.
Yep.
Okay. Steve, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Is there any way, I have a custom coded site, and as far as I can tell, when someone opens it up, the images load all together. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to have them load from the top down as they're seeing the site, or is it not?
There is. That's called lazy loading. I don't know that much about it. I typically work with WordPress, and there are plugins built for that kind of thing. But there's JavaScript scripts that can help with that.
Okay, I'll look into it. Thanks.
Cool. Anything else?
Cocktail time.
Get the champers out more like.
Yeah, bloody right.
I got one.
Yay.
Awesome. Steve, what is the definition of an impression?
That is when your website comes up on a SERP. And like John was asking right off the bat earlier, does it matter if it's on the 10th page or whatever? So I believe someone actually has to pull up the page. Like for me, I have 100 loaded at a time because that's just how I have my settings on Google. So if somebody goes to the 3rd or 4th page and your website comes up, it still comes up as an impression.
Okay, so they need to click on it?
No, because that an impression is just coming up to view. A click is a click.
No, but they need to click on in the Google search terms, in the Google search results, they need to click on that.
Yeah, page 1, page 2, yeah.
Okay.
Let me, did anybody have any specific questions about their CMSs? Because I just kind of went over real quickly with the H1 titles and the page titles. Do you have anything you wanted to get a little more in depth on, or not?
You looked at all our CMSs, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what they are?
Yeah, I have that list somewhere here in the slide. Oh,
I
no.
just looked up one of the sites and you have to pay for it. You have to sign up.
One of what sites?
You told us, maybe I'm talking about something different.
I think you are, Tim.
Well,
You're talking about Securi?
No, what's the CMS again?
Well, the CMSs you guys are using, there's 9 WordPress sites, 8 custom coded, 4 Squarespace. That might be the one that you have to pay for. 3 Weebly, 1 Wix, and 1 Shopify. And Weebly and Wix, I believe you have to pay for those too. You can, set up a free website with a bad domain name, but if you want to use your own domain name, you're going to need to pay for it. I think Squarespace is around $15 a month to start with. Weebly and Wix are probably about the same price, maybe a little cheaper. And Shopify, I have no idea how much that is. I think that's 20 or 25 bucks. I know a friend of mine has a Shopify site, but I didn't really help him with it. So
I have a question. I have a WordPress site and it's a Yoast plugin.
Great plugin, yep.
And it's often asking me to add H2, and I haven't figured out how to add any H1 or H2. I haven't figured out where on that site to actually fix that. I tried just literally adding subheadings and making them bold, and it didn't pick up on that. But it's often asking me to do that to further my optimization.
Okay, so when an H1 is typically the top line of text in your content area. So if you don't want to just make it bold, there should be a pull down menu in the text. It'll probably default to paragraph. If you open up that pull down menu, there should be H1, H2, H3, H4.
Okay, I'll have to look for that.
Highlight that text and then bring up that pull down menu. And you should be able to select it there.
Okay, I'll look for that.
Cool.
Steve?
No.
The DA score is what I was wondering about.
Okay.
That's the one I looked up the site you gave, and you have to sign up and.
Oh, Moz?
You get a couple of views and then they ping you and you have to sign up.
Yeah, but if you Google domain authority checker, there are free websites out there.
Okay.
I came across at least 4 or 5 and just picked one, and you can do multiple.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
When you go to add, you said H1 and H2. What should H2 be? Like H1 is the page title.
The page title plus, whatever you want to add to it, because there's no limit on the text there, but it should basically explain what the page is about.
That's what H2 is? Or that's what
H-
H1
That's what
is?
H1 is. H2, like if you have a subject that you're talking about and then you want to do a deep dive into something else, yeah, just like you would with I guess magazines, you know how they have the title of their piece, and then there's a subheader that talks about a specific part of that subject that they're talking about. It should be kind of natural, but you want to stuff the keywords in there where you can.
Okay.
The H2s aren't nearly as important as the H1s though.
Photo titles, Steve.
Photo titles, is that what it's called?
No, I'm asking you a different question.
Oh, okay.
So before it even gets into your system, what you call your photo is important, isn't it?
The file names.
Yes.
Important. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it does matter.
Okay.
It helps for Google Images.
Yeah. It does. I mean, you can put the keywords in there, the alt text for images on your website. Yeah.
Is there a format for that, or is it just using the right language?
Just using the right language.
And
no spaces though, just word dash word dash word.
that was my next question.
Yeah,
Okay.
no spaces in there.
Okay.
Not word comma,
No commas.
word dash.
Yeah.
Talking about
And that's the alt text?
No, that's the file names.
Oh, you should use a dash, or you should not use a dash.
You should use a dash. No spaces. No comma.
So word dash word dash word.
Yes.
Got it.
Dot file extension, JPEG, Bing, or whatever.
Right. My dogs want their dinner.
I want your dog's dinner. No, wait, no, I don't. I want your dog's beer.
So do I. Thanks, y'all. I have to go.
All right. Thank you.
I'll come up with questions later.
All right. Shoot me an email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.
All right.
right.
Good weekend.
Good day.
Hey,
Thank-
Charlie, you're moving through windows.
What? I'm doing what?
You're
Yeah,
moving through windows.
Yeah, I drove down to Ludlow too. Thank you.
I think he's going to get the bottle of wine.
Negronis,
Yeah, well done.
lightweight shit.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya. Have a good weekend.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.